The final judgment, the new earth, and Christ's reign of peace. End-time prophecies and instructions from Jesus through 𝗵𝗿𝗰. The rapture of the little flock before the final judgment. Who will be raptured? Only the Christians who, despite all the persecutions of faith, continue to act according to Jesus' will and remain faithful to Him until His return, will be taken away from the earth. It will only be a small crowd, however. How large will the multitude of the raptured ones be? No number is mentioned. Only a small flock will be part of the rapture. How can believers become part of the rapture? Faith in Jesus as God, adherence to His teachings, love for Him and one's neighbor, faithfulness and open confession of Jesus, perseverance and steadfastness during the battle of faith. All of this will bring about salvation through the rapture. Where will these believers be? Faithful Christians live all over the world. Therefore, the rapture will likewise take place everywhere. How will they know that the rapture is imminent? They will experience the return of Jesus as well as their imminent rapture from within or without. When and how will the rapture take place? It will occur at a time when hardship and tribulation appear to become unbearable. Who can understand the rapturing process? The process of the rapture is understandable and therefore believable only for people who have a deep understanding of it. Unbelievers will not believe in a rapture and, as such, will not understand any such event. How will those who are left behind react? Those who are not among the visibly raptured ones will now understand that the predictions of such an event are a reality. That's why their horror, fear, and panic, and their weeping and wailing will be great. Will the visible rapture still be able to save some last unbelievers? Due to the visible rapture of the Christians, the unbelievers will have a last chance for realization, conversion, and returning to God, that is, Jesus. However, their conversion must happen of their own free will. Where will the raptured ones go? The little Christian flock raptured in the physical body will be taken to a spiritual, Edenic, peaceful, and earth-like environment. After the reformation of the earth, they will return to it in a new physical body. Will the raptured ones populate the renewed earth? The raptured ones will form the parent tribe for a new period of redemption upon the renewed earth. They are spiritually far advanced and will live a life for and with Jesus. They will pass the knowledge of the past era and the end on to the descendants upon the new earth. The final judgment, the end of this period of mankind by the scorching of the surface of the earth. How long has a judgment by fire been predicted as the final divine judgment? Prophets have predicted a final judgment by fire for earth and mankind for a long time. Will people believe the warnings and prophecies? Almost all people doubt a complete destruction of the earth's surface and mankind by fire as a final judgment. Can this final judgment still be averted or postponed? God has always known the will and inclination of the people. He knows the development process and puts an end to it if a certain measure of erroneous development is exceeded. The time that has been predetermined for this since eternity will therefore not be cancelled or postponed. What is the purpose of the final judgment? The final judgment decides on the state of the soul and its fate. Depending on the character, behavior, deeds, and faith of a person, it will either have a preserving and protective effect, or a judging, retaliatory, atoning, and punishing effect. What will the circumstances and the lifestyles be like right before the final judgment? Materially speaking, out of the chaos of the natural catastrophe from the cosmos, order will be restored for the followers of the Antichrist, and material prosperity will return. On the other hand, the not raptured Christians, as well as all other believers, will be persecuted, disadvantaged, and plunged into the most bitter poverty. In the end, all believers shall be killed. The godless and sinful conditions are similar to those at the time before Noah's flood, but they are much worse this time around. Warnings of the imminent end are ignored. What signs point to the final judgment? The catastrophe from the cosmos is the last and largest warning before the actual end. After that, merely individual volcanic eruptions, cracks in the earth, magma discharges, and earthquakes warn of the imminent, complete destruction of the Earth's surface. Unusual unrest will manifest in both people and animals directly before the day of judgment. These last warnings will be ignored as well by the worldly people. When will the final judgment by fire occur? An exact year or date for the final judgment by fire is not predicted, which is for the good of mankind. It will come as a surprise for almost all people, since hardly anyone believes in the possibility of such events ever occurring. The actual trigger for the imminent final judgment by fire will be when the followers of the Antichrist set out to kill the last faithful Christians. That is when the days will be shortened, and the sudden and unexpected return of Jesus, the rescue of the still living believers, and the destruction of the Earth's surface take place. People must be informed about the imminent end, paying attention to the admonitions and warnings of the end times. They must constantly adjust to them and live accordingly. The period and conditions of the end times have been prophesied for a long time now. However, based on various prophecies of Jesus between 22 and 24 AD, the time frame of the final end time events can be narrowed down to a few years. Will the day of the end come as a surprise to everyone? The prophetic announcements of the end of mankind and the earth, which have existed for a long time, remained and will remain unnoticed by most people until the event occurs. Not only for the people of the world who do not believe the prophecies of the end, but also for believers with knowledge of it, will the end ultimately come suddenly and surprisingly. Will the experiments in the depths of the earth trigger the utter destruction of the Earth's surface? The followers of the Antichrist will trigger forces within the depths of the earth by irresponsible, localized experiments, without being aware of the repercussions of their actions, which, in the end, they will not be able to stop anymore. They will inadvertently set off explosive chain reactions within the earth and bring about their own destruction. They sacrifice living people as test objects for their experiments. Since God does not tolerate such irresponsible and sacrilegious experiments, which stem from a craving for fame, an excessive need for recognition, and greed for material goods, He allows the atomic destruction of the earth to happen. Without having sufficient knowledge and understanding, they shall, for the sake of profit, release localized forces through deep drillings. However, as soon as these experiments succeed, the following chain reaction is no longer limitable, and everything explosively shatters into atomic components. This will happen to the entire surface of the earth, even down to great depths. Satan drives the researchers to these experiments in order to destroy the earth, and thereby terminate the spiritual development that is taking place upon it. In doing so, however, he facilitates the creation of a renewed earth by God. Through the dissolution of everything, the shattering of matter into atoms, and the release of the spiritual elements therein, new exterior forms can now be molded with the matching spiritual components. What is the sequence of events that constitute the utter destruction of the Earth's surface? The final judgment in the form of the scorching of the Earth's surface and the destruction of everything living within, upon, and above it lasts only a few hours. Magma eruptions through fissures in the earth, violent earthquakes, flames emerging from the depths, volcanic eruptions, a veritable rain of fire, uproar of all elements, floods and enormous storms. All of this taken together will bring about the utter destruction of the Earth's surface. No stone will remain atop the other. The roaring thunder throughout the disastrous events signals the deafening voice of God, waking up the spiritually sleeping mankind, since the previous, quiet admonitions and warnings were overheard continually. People will be consumed by the flames emerging from the bowels of the earth, and they will fall into the abyss. However, the destruction of the earth from within and the atmospheric ignition will proceed at different rates all around the globe. How will the people react to this event? There will be no escape, for the same judgment will be recognizable everywhere. Fright, horror, confusion, helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness, indescribable panic, and fear of death will dominate the people of the world. Will only the Earth's surface or the entire Earth be destroyed? The entire surface of the Earth will be scorched down to great depths, but the core and the Earth as a whole will remain. With these events will this era of mankind and Earth history end. However, the Earth's surface must be completely redesigned in order to continue to be habitable for human beings. Who will meet his end in the judgment of fire? The people who have turned away from God, pledged allegiance to Satan, served the Antichrist, and lived purely worldly lives will find their death during the final judgment of fire. They have not believed and are filled with wickedness and falsehood, and so the earth will swallow them up in a lake of fire. For which unbelievers is salvation possible? Since God gives every person, even the most wicked and erring, opportunities to recognize their errors, to change their thinking and behavior, and to return to God, conversion and thus salvation from a renewed banishment is indeed possible, even until the very last moment. After their death, they arrive in the spiritual world and will be able to incarnate on the new earth, striving to develop higher and higher. However, those who persist in their resistance are lost without salvation and are banished into matter. Will survival only be possible through the rapture? Salvation from the final judgment by fire will only be granted to those who have remained faithful to God, that is, Jesus, even during the most difficult battle of faith against the Antichrist and his followers. They will consciously witness the destruction of the earth and the doom of the wicked and bad. Banishment of incorrigible opponents of God into matter. Renewed banishment. What does banishment into matter mean exactly? If a human being completely departs from God, constantly transgresses the divine order, and all its striving is for the acquisition of material goods and enjoyment, the soul hardens. After the death of the body, such a human soul is dissolved into individual soul particles. It is then banished into matter and has to restart its development from square one through all the kingdoms of nature, until it can become a free human soul once again. For who is the renewed banishment more beneficial than an existence in the beyond? Sins have consequences and require atonement. If, due to too great and too many sins, such an atonement is not possible during one's lifetime on earth or in the spiritual world, a renewed banishment of the soul into matter is the preferable and more merciful way to go. At what point does the banishment into matter take place? As long as there is even the slightest chance for a voluntary return to God, His order, and all that is good, no spirit is banished after its physical death. However, if, after the end of a developmental period on earth, these conditions are no longer given, such souls will be banished into matter once again. Mankind is now standing on the precipice of such an event. Who will be banished into matter during the final judgment? Only those whose striving against God is persistent and whose cup of wickedness is filled to the brim will be swallowed by the earth during the final judgment of fire, and their souls will be banished into matter. What purpose does a renewed banishment have? A banishment of the spiritual into matter is, on one hand, punishment and atonement, a settlement of one's guilt for complete godlessness and wickedness. But on the other hand, it is a means of education and a chance to regain one's freedom through the stages of development in nature. Why is banishment of the soul into matter so terrible? A human soul, which previously possessed freedom, perceives the utter lack of freedom after the banishment into matter as terrible. Is banishment into matter merely a judgment, or a grace and a chance for development as well? Even though a renewed banishment of the soul into matter is the utmost consequence for a failed life, it is, in the long run, nevertheless the most merciful, beneficial, and promising alternative as well, under the given circumstances, when compared to a development in hell. The kingdom of peace upon the renewed earth. Why are fundamental reformations necessary? Everything that has fallen away from God must return to God's filiation. If this is not achieved in a developmental period, the process continues in a new period. The particles of the soul banished into newly formed matter thereby return to human nature through the natural realms. How quickly does the scorched surface of the earth transform into a new earth? The renewal of the scorched earth and the creation of new forms containing banished spiritual contents can and will instantly happen through an act of creation by God. However, the raptured survivors will not witness this act of creation. How will the raptured ones experience and remember the fall of the earth? The raptured ones will indeed observe the doom of mankind by the scorching of the surface of the earth, but they will neither be affected nor burdened by it within their consciousness. Will the raptured ones witness the reshaping of the earth? While the raptured ones temporarily dwell in an Edenic abode, the reshaping of the earth's surface by God will take place without them witnessing it. However, it will be explained to them. Only then will they return to the renewed earth. Will the raptured ones know how long the rapture will last? Since the raptured ones are deprived of the concept of time, they will not be able to estimate the duration of their rapture into an Edenic environment. Who will the first inhabitants of the new earth be? The believers raptured during Jesus' return will inhabit the new earth as progenitors, raising a new generation of people. Why is the knowledge of the destruction of the old earth important on the new earth as well? Those who have been raptured from the old earth must keep the memory of the past era, together with all its aberrations and sins, in order to pass it on to the descendants as a constant warning. What will await the newly arrived upon the renewed earth? The myriad of new creations and impressions of the new earth will be overwhelming. They will surpass everything that the old earth offered. What tasks will the raptured ones have on the new earth? They are to bear witness to the return of Jesus on the old earth, and they are to deliver and teach the word of God to the descendants. Later on, when people will once again become more materialistic, they are to remind them about the doom of the old earth. They are to help the descendants in reaching complete redemption and assisting the banished ones in ascending development. They must give the descendants a living testimony of the power, might, love, and perfection of Jesus. What conditions will there be on the renewed earth? People will live for a long time in inner and outer peace, and in harmony with themselves and their environment. They will experience freedom, happiness, and bliss, and be full of truth and strength. What significance will the love for God and one's neighbor have? Love for God, that is, Jesus, and one's neighbor will play a central role for happiness and peace upon the new earth. Jesus will always be in the midst of them, granting them joy and teaching them. Angels will be in constant contact with the tender and affectionate people. Will the people recognize God in Jesus? They will recognize God in Jesus, as well as acknowledge and love Him. Their relationship with Jesus will be quite intimate. They will serve Him completely, heed His order and commandments, and be blessed. Who will teach and guide the people? Since all the survivors of the old earth had already reached an elevated spiritual level, they can be guided and taught by angels. This way, they will also be able to give their descendants optimal conditions for further development. Concerning the handling of new creations, their proper use, and about religious or other questions, the new inhabitants will be instructed directly by Jesus and His angels. What will give people joy and bliss? There will be many reasons to be joyful, blissful, and at peace, all thanks to the many glories and marvels of the divine love, similar to those in the more elevated spirit world. What effects will new and unknown substances, as well as creations, have? Through new elements and compounds, God will create completely new kinds of works and beings. This will lead to Edenic feelings of bliss, as they will delight the eye and the heart with their beauty and purpose. Through inner guidance, the people will learn the proper use of the new works quite quickly. By what means will love, tranquility, order, and peace prevail? Where Jesus and His doctrine have sole dominion, love, tranquility, order, and peace will reign, because then Satan will be eliminated. People will once again live according to the original order, as the first people of the earth did. Everything will live in harmony with each other. The mineral, plant, and animal worlds will fully adapt to the needs of human beings. People will live in blissful togetherness with Jesus. God's blessing will visibly come to light. How will the animals behave among themselves? The animals will live peacefully among themselves. Every work of creation will be ready to serve. How will marriages be contracted and children conceived? On the new earth, marriages will be contracted and children will be conceived as well, all according to the divine order. Will the people be healthy? Yes, they will indeed be healthy and free from suffering and pain. Sorrow, hardship, and misery will no longer exist. God will provide for them in a fatherly way. How many people will the new earth be able to provide for? There will never be problems with an alleged overpopulation. Will the life expectancy increase? People will live for a long time and use their life wisely. Will there still be fear of death? Fear of dying and death will no longer exist. Will everything that had almost matured on the old earth become a human being more quickly now? If the development of the soul into a human being was almost complete on the old earth, this goal will now be reached much more quickly. Why will the continued development through the kingdoms of nature happen more quickly? Satan's banishment will facilitate and accelerate the higher development. Will material substances exist for shorter periods of time, and, as such, will the development be more rapid? Yes, the material creations will exist for shorter periods of time, and the liberation of what is bound within them will happen faster. How will the development of those who were banished into matter proceed on the new earth? The godless and wicked people banished into matter after the final judgment will be given a new opportunity to develop through the kingdoms of nature and become human beings again. Whereby will the conditions on the new earth worsen once again. Even on this new earth, after a long time, spiritual changes will emerge again, when immature souls will incarnate from matter into human beings. Negative material dispositions and urges will gain importance once again. How can Satan gain influence in the millennial kingdom of peace? If people begin to strive for material things again, and when more and more spiritual components that have passed through creation, but are not yet properly trained in the divine order, become human beings, Satan will be able to gain influence on the new earth, in the millennial kingdom of peace, through disorderly behavior of the people.